Our next presentation is Data Validation, presented by John Simone of the South Coast AQMD.
Hello and welcome. This is the California Air Resources Board PQAO training. It is October 19th, 2021, and this is the data validation training presentation. My name is John Simone. I am with the South Coast Air Quality Management District, and this is the data validation training presentation that we put together. So we have a PowerPoint slide presentation, and we'll get right to it. And here we go. So in accordance with 40 CFR 58.16, paragraph C, ambient air quality monitoring data submitted to the EPA's air quality system database must be validated. As such, data collected as part of the National Ambient Air Quality Monitoring Program must undergo a comprehensive data review process prior to AQS submittal. The data validation process described in this training session will center on elements of these requirements. Data validation is a required element in air monitoring regulations and covered under Section 17 of the QA Handbook, Volume 2. Monitoring organizations are required to establish quality systems for their air monitoring programs. A quality system is the framework by which an organization applies sufficient quality control and quality assurance practices to ensure program results meet or exceed expectations. Data review, verification, and validation are techniques used to accept, reject, or qualify data in an objective and consistent manner. This in turn assures that these quality objectives are met. The framework under which we operate to ensure we produce quality data are specified in the Code of Federal Regulations, 40 CFR Parts 50, 53, and 58, the Quality Assurance Handbook, Volume 2, and its appendices, the Air Monitoring Agency's Quality Assurance Project Plan, Agency Standard Operating Procedures, the Instrument Federal Reference Method or equivalent, and instrument manuals and guides. Reviewing and validating data ensures compliance with regulatory requirements. It ensures that the data is technically sound. It ensures that the data is such that it is defensible in a court of law. And in the end, data meets EPA data quality objectives and maintains that data is suitable in decision-making processes. So many of the criteria that we verify and validate our data is found in the QA Handbook's Appendix D. And there is a link for it right there that we provide. So the QA Handbook Appendix D validation template is a set of tables, and it's really the go-to resource for quality data objectives that you must meet. So other sources of data validation guidance, standard operating procedure from ARB, it's titled the Data Review and Validation, and there is a link for it right there. South Coast AQMD has its own data validation SOP. I was not able to provide a link for it today in this slide, but if you email me, I can provide you a copy of it. So Appendix D to the QA Handbook, it is the go-to resource for quality data validation and verification. And it is a set of tables, and there's critical criteria, operational criteria, and systemic criteria listed for each parameter. The table is set up where it goes parameter by parameter, and it has the various criteria that I just listed for each one, listed for each parameter pollutant. So going forward, critical criteria are deemed the most critical to maintaining data integrity, and observations that do not meet each and every criterion in the critical criteria table should be invalidated unless there is compelling reason and justification for not doing so. The cause of not operating within one or more of these criteria must be investigated and documented. The snippet that we have here is part of the critical criteria for ozone, and some of these 1-point QC checks and zero span checks you're already familiar with, I'm sure. Operational criteria. Criteria that are important for maintaining and evaluating the quality of the collection system are operational criteria. Violation of criterion or a number of criteria may be cause for invalidation. The decision maker must consider other quality control information that may or may not indicate that the data are acceptable for the parameter being controlled. Therefore, the sample or group of samples for which one or more of these criteria are not met are deemed suspect unless other quality control information demonstrates otherwise and is documented. The reason for not meeting these criteria must be investigated, mitigated, and justified. Systemic criteria. Systemic criteria do not usually affect the quality of the data and are seldom used for invalidation. Systemic criteria are for uniformity, reporting requirements, averaging, completeness, citing, etc. Non-conformance with systemic criteria may lead to data having qualifier codes attached describing an issue such as citing. Although not the source of immediate invalidation of data, systemic criteria should and must happen for compliance of other sections of the Federal Register. Failure of meeting systemic criteria may affect daily operations, impact data use, data reporting, citing, and sample handling, to name a few examples. So data validation, a couple of terms. Data validation versus verification. Two quick definitions. Data verification is to make sure that the data is accurate, whereas data validation is to make sure that the data is correct. It's an overall view of the data set and all its qualifying components. And data validation is a routine and consistent process designed to ensure that reported values meet the quality goals of the environmental data operation. Data verification. The evaluation of data for correctness, completeness, and conformity. Data verification is objective in nature. It acknowledges that data does or does not meet criteria associated with the process being performed. Data verification is often a single 1-point QC check. Examples of this are nightly precision checks, spans or zeros for gaseous instruments, or a monthly flow check for a continuous or manual sampler. Data verification also states whether criteria are met, i.e. whether you have 75% data capture, PCs occurred every 14 days, shelter temperature is within certain tolerance for an instrument. These are all, this is all qualifying data which can be verified for accuracy. So data validation, a tiered approach. Data validation is a multi-step review process conducted by several individuals in different roles. Data validation takes place from the operator to the management level, from data generation to reporting to AQS. Data validation ensures that data in AQS tells the complete and correct story. Multi-level review may be harder in small agencies, but should be completed by as many different sets of eyes as possible. Data validation review levels. Level 0. So level 0 is often referred to as machine level validation. It occurs at the data logger sampler level. It can be continuous or daily samplers. It contains pre-programmed routines, distinguishes data no good periods from ambient data, codes data based on executed tasks, example, precision checks, calibrations, zero sequences. Programmed level 0 codes can also be used for QC checks to identify high values, repeating values, severe negative concentrations, temperature, pressure, and flow warnings. These can all be programmed into a system and be used as a machine level review. And here we have, I got a couple of snips from our software program that we use. It's DMS, the data management system. Some of you may be familiar with it. The background picture is QC checks for a parameter, for a site rather. And here you have a little bit more up close look at some of the parameters that it's looking at, temperature exceedances, full scale errors, severe negatives, etc. So level 1 review. Level 1 review is conducted by the site operator. It occurs at daily, weekly, and monthly frequencies, depending on the data type. Validation of continuous or daily samplers, documents observed events or performed tasks, manually codes data appropriately, and it occurs at minute and hourly levels. Level 1 review also recognizes trends that are typical for that site, checks for data gaps and completeness, and distinguishes ambient measurements from instrument malfunctions and other anomalies. So the level 1 review is the first real person review of data, and in that they are reviewing the data and distinguishing and coding the data for events that may not have been coded by the machine level. There may have been power outage gaps that where bulk codes are going to have to be applied over a period of time, things of that nature. And there is an example of that right there, where there was a power outage, and there's a large missing chunk of data. Level 2 review. Level 2 review is an independent review of level 1 data validation. It checks all aspects of level 1 review for completeness, performed separately from field staff, validation of continuous and daily samplers as well, and it occurs on a monthly or quarterly frequency, ensures data QA and QC requirements are met. It ensures data satisfies program and EPA requirements. And here's a snip of a report that we have programmed into our system, where we get PC checks for the month printed out. These can be reviewed on a monthly basis. We can see where the PCs were out and where data will have to be invalidated. Level 3 review. Level 3 is an independent review to all previous levels of data validation. It is performed separately from other data validation and field staff. It verifies level 1 and level 2 data validation. It occurs monthly, quarterly, and annually. It ensures data meets QA, QC requirements, and approves data suitability and release to AQS. Validated data is processed and formatted for upload to AQS when it is complete. Data is uploaded to AQS on a minimum of a quarterly basis. It must be uploaded within 90 days of the end of a quarter, and data is certified annually based on data and QC data uploaded in that calendar year. So we verify and validate our data, and it's uploaded to the AQS database, and it is then made available for public review and for the EPA, which is our end goal. So that's the end of our presentation today. I hope you were able to get something from it. If you ever have any questions about anything related to this or data validation at all, please just give me an email or a call. I'd be happy to answer it. Thank you very much. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, John, for that. Does anyone have any questions? I see one. Are level 3 spot checks, or do you have a checklist form?
We have a checklist form, and so I have a fairly rigorous checklist that I go through for data level 3 data validation. It's actually contained as a appendix to our SOP, which I can make available to you.
What is South Coast's wait period after each quarter ends? Do you meet the 90-day deadline for uploading data to AQS often?
Yes, generally speaking, we meet the 90-day period for raw data. Often PC checks and zeros and spans may go past the 90 days. Also, when I say the raw data is in by 90 days, I mean that's for criteria pollutants. Also in that category that may go over that 90-day mark is MET data, meteorological data. Kind of gets done after all the criteria data is in. So that may go over 90 days, but generally speaking, yes. Although we have a lot of data, I personally review over 300,000 hourly data points a quarter, and that all gets uploaded within 90 days.
It makes sense that you prioritize the criteria pollutant ambient data.
Yes, that's our number one objective and goal. So we make sure that gets in there in time, because there are people out there that are looking forward to seeing it, and we get it in there.
Is anyone excluded from that last step of formatting for AQS upload and uploading to AQS? Can level 2 reviewer complete this step?
Yes, a level 2 reviewer has completed this step in the past in our organization. As she's taken on more of a role in the data validation process, it has kind of reverted back to me. But yes, the AQS upload process can be done by somebody not in that chain.
Do you submit zero span records to AQS? What null codes do you use on zero span records that have suffered a calibration system error, but the surrounding ambient data is valid?
Yeah, so for PC events like that, as you know, we mark them as a 1C event. I guess the system has not been programmed to accept 1Cs for spans and zeros. So in that case, we use AN as a machine malfunction, because often when the span or the zero is didn't run or is outrageously off, it's because of a system error, like a zero error system, or a calibrator is off, and that's basically a machine malfunction. So that would be AN, machine malfunction.
Do you rely on outside agencies or vendors to perform any data validation levels?
No, we do not. So, South Coast is pretty large. We have, 40 sites, and we have 9 regular operators that perform level 1 data validation. We have a person who's dedicated to level 2 data validation and the person that's dedicated to level 3 data validation. It's all within our organization, and it's all performed in-house.
Sam says thank you.
You're very much welcome.
Is your validation documentation on a separate form, or is it within the DMS?
For the most part, it's it's both, I guess. Some of it is done within DMS, and some of it takes place outside of DMS as well. I guess for documentation purposes, I guess in the end, everything is notated back into DMS regardless. So I guess the answer is in DMS. Yes, now that I think of it.
Any other questions?
And my contact information is probably under the speaker list. If anybody ever wants to get in touch, or any information that I might be able to provide, I'd be happy to help.
All right. If there are no other questions, you could give it a little while longer.
Sure.
Um,
And since I will add, since I did started and actually completed this presentation previously, the EPA has come out with a guidance document on data validation and review, and it's brand new. It just got published in August of 2021, and I didn't really get to incorporate it into this presentation, but I have a link for it right there that I just pasted into the chat. I encourage you to take a look at that. There's a lot. I haven't gone through it in depth. It looks like there's a lot of good information in there.
okay, one question. When criteria says the greater of a % difference and an absolute difference, does a QC check just need to pass one or the other? And then they provided an example. Example being an NO2 check that has an absolute difference of 1.8 ppb not passing, but a % difference of 7.5% passing.
Well, our PC checks are a lot higher than that, and I understand where the question is coming from, but in terms of audits and checks of that nature, it's one or the other. If it's within the difference of 1.8 ppb, or if it's under that but yet over the % deviation, it would still be considered passing.
Okay, great. Thanks, John, and thank you all for your questions. Albert says, to clarify, we utilize the 1C code for span and zero, as well as PC checks at South Coast. Thanks, Albert. So we are starting our next session in a moment here. We'll see you all there. Thank you.